No cameras, no headlines. Just Keanu. The rain had been falling since morning, soft at first like a whisper on the roof, then harder, pounding the streets of Los Angeles with the weight of something unsaid. No one noticed the man walking slowly along the sidewalk. His black hoodie was soaked through, the sleeves pushed up just enough to reveal a bruised forearm. He didn't flinch when the cold water slid down his face. He just kept walking. He didn't. Want to be seen? Not today. Keanu Reeves had just left a small forgotten corner of the city, where someone he once knew had been buried without a crowd, without a speech, without flowers. Her name was Angela. She was a wardrobe assistant from one of his earliest films. No press came. No one knew. But Keanu came. He had come in silence, arrived in a borrowed car, and sat on the grass for nearly 2 hours after the service ended. No umbrella, no bodyguard. Just him and the memory of a kind soul who once patched up the tear on his costume and told him to take better care of himself as he walked back through the city. He looked like any tired man coming home from a long day. No one noticed that he had given away his jacket to a man shivering beneath a plastic sheet near the bus stop. No one saw him slip $20 into a child's backpack when her mother wasn't looking. He didn't want them to. He wasn't doing it for them. He never did inside a quiet little bookstore on 3rd and Washington. Maya Winters was closing up early. She had owned the place for 12 years. Sales were down. Her rent had gone up again. And now her register was short by $200. The day had beaten her. Her hair was tied back messily. Her hands were ink-stained from sorting old poetry books. And her eyes were red not from tears, but from holding them in too long. When the bell above the door jingled, she sighed and said without looking, "Sorry. We're closed." But the man who stepped inside didn't turn around. He walked to the nearest shelf, dripping slightly onto the wooden floor, and picked up a thin, bent paperback. Maya blinked. I said, and then she stopped. She knew that. Face. Not from tabloids, not from movies. From something else. Something quieter. Years ago, before the fame meant anything to her, before her life became a battle to keep the lights on and the hope alive, Keanu looked up at her, his expression gentle, his voice low. I remember this place. Ah! Maya stepped back slowly. You were here before? He nodded and held up the book. He gave me this. It was my first Bukowski, she laughed, more out of shock than anything. I don't remember. He smiled. You were kind. I was just wandering, Maya tried. To make sense of it. He had no driver, no entourage, no cameras. It's just him. In that same paperback he bought 12 years ago, he placed the book on the counter and looked at her again. You look like you need someone to talk to. That broke something in her, Maya. Sat down behind the counter, suddenly too tired to pretend. The story came out in bits. The money gone. It's the landlord threatening to evict. The fact that she hadn't called her sister in months because she was too ashamed to ask for help. She didn't expect anything. She wasn't even sure why she told him. He listened. So I churn Samuel well and the cell res and cell and since and so on and suddenly sense and incense and sense 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 and cells and on on and send lay so by and send and sense and he didn't give her a business card or say he knew someone. He just stood, walked to the back room, and started stacking boxes. Maya jumped up. What are you doing? You said you couldn't finish inventory alone, he said. I have time. And he did. For the next 2 hours they worked side by side, unpacking old novels, taping broken book spines. He didn't say much, but his presence filled the room like warmth in winter. Before he left, he scribbled something. On a notepad beside the register, he didn't ask for thanks. Didn't even take the book. After he was gone, Maya walked over and read the note. "The world needs your stories. Stay open. I'll be back soon." Beneath it was a phone number. Just 10 digits. No name. The next morning, when Maya came to open the store, there was a line of people outside. A dozen at first, then 2 dozen, then more. Someone had posted about the shop on social media. Someone well known, someone who had never tagged himself, just shared a photo of the front window with the words, "This place saved my life once. Maybe it can save yours too." Maya stared at the screen in disbelief. The handle was anonymous, but she knew who it was. She never saw the moment it was posted. No headlines followed. No flashing lights. Just a growing crowd and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, things were turning around and far away. In a small cafe near the ocean, Keanu Reeves sat with his coffee growing cold, watching the waves roll in. He didn't check his phone. Didn't need to. He had done what he came to do. He helped, and no one would ever know. The girl on the curb city didn't stop for anyone. Cars rushed past, people stared into their phones, and music from storefronts bled into the noise of footsteps and engines. Somewhere in the middle of all that movement, a girl sat on the edge of the sidewalk. She wasn't begging. She wasn't crying. She just sat with her knees pulled up and her head buried in her arms. Keanu noticed her as he walked back from the small community theater where he'd done a quiet reading the night before. No press had come. Just a few dozen people, mostly older women and young poets, who sat in folding chairs and listened to him read passages from a dusty Russian novel. He didn't take any photos afterward, just nodded and left the same way. He entered soft and unnoticed. Now, he was walking with a bag of pastries under one arm, and the morning sunlight warming the back of his neck. He would have kept going if it weren't for the way the girl's shoulders trembled every few seconds. Barely noticeable. But not to him. He walked past her first, paused, then turned around. He crouched slowly, not getting too close. "Hey," he said gently. "You all right?" The girl didn't move. Then she peeked up. Her eyes were swollen, not just from crying, from lack of sleep, from hunger, from something deeper. "I'm fine," she whispered, but her voice cracked on the second. Word Keanu didn't ask for her name. He didn't pull out a phone or take a photo like others might. He simply sat beside her, cross-legged on the edge of the curb, and offered the bag of pastries without saying a word. She stared at it like it was something sacred. Then she reached in and took one, as if expecting him to pull it back. When he didn't, she relaxed. A little, he took out one for himself too and sat silently. They ate together like old friends who didn't need to fill the quiet with words. After a while, she said, "My name's Lila." He smiled. "Hi, Lila." She hesitated. "You look like someone famous." He shrugged. "Some people say that. Are you?" He looked at her, his voice calm. "I'm someone who knows what it's like to feel alone." She didn't ask again. Her walls came down slowly, like melting ice. Lila had run away from a group home 2 nights before. She wasn't bad, she wasn't broken, she was just tired. Tired of being passed around, of people pretending to care, then disappearing. Tired of hearing the words "you're strong" from people who never stayed long enough to see the truth. Keanu listened. Not like someone trying to fix her, like someone who respected her story. When she finished, she wiped her eyes quickly and said, "You're probably going to call the police or something." He shook his head. "No, I'm just here." They sat for a few more minutes, letting the day wake up around them. Then he stood. There's a diner 2 blocks away. Warm booth. Good pancakes. "You want to go?" She hesitated. "No pressure," he added. She nodded slowly. The two of them walked together, not touching, not speaking, just moving forward. At the diner, he let her order whatever she wanted. He didn't ask questions while she devoured the pancakes. He just poured her more syrup when she ran out and slid the extra napkins toward her when she sniffled into her sleeve after breakfast. He paid with cash. No receipts. No records. Outside, he gave her a folded slip of paper. This is a shelter. Good people. They won't ask too many questions. They'll listen if you talk. Lila looked down at the paper. Her hand shook. Will I see you again? She asked, her voice soft. Maybe, he said. But even if you don't, you've got this. You're not invisible. And then he did something simple. He hugged her. Not tight. Not too long. Just enough to remind her that someone saw her. Someone chose to stop. Then he turned and walked away. Lila watched him disappear into the crowd. She held the slip of paper, like a lifeline. That night, she walked into the shelter. When they asked her who helped her find the place, she smiled and said, just a man who gave me a pastry. No one knew what happened that morning. No cameras caught it. No stories were written. But for one girl, the world shifted. Not because Keanu Reeves was a star, but because he was kind. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything. The bike, the boy, and the broken streetlight night was cool and quiet. The kind of night when the city sighs after a long day and the streets belong to those who don't fit the hours of daylight. Under a flickering streetlight on the corner of Maple and 6th, a boy sat beside a broken bicycle. He was maybe 10 years old, with scraped knees and grease on his hands. At every few minutes he would hit the bent wheel with a small rock as if it might straighten itself out of fear. Keanu had just finished visiting an old friend in the hospital. He walked the blocks back to his apartment without any intention of stopping. But he saw the boy. Not just the boy, but the stillness in him. The quiet frustration. The kind that says, I've given up, even if no words are said. He slowed. Down the boy noticed him. His body tensed like he might run, but he stayed seated, clutching a loose pedal in his hand. You okay? Keanu asked. The boy shrugged. Fine. He wasn't. Closer, nodding at the bike. That yours? The boy gave a short nod, then looked away. What happened? I hit a curb. The wheel's all bent now. Mom's gonna be mad. She saved up for it. Keanu sat down on the curb beside him, ignoring the wet from the earlier drizzle. You tried fixing it? I don't know how. Keanu studied the bike for a moment. Maybe we can try together. The boy didn't answer, but he didn't stop him either. For the next 20 minutes, they worked side by side. Keanu asked for tools, and the boy handed them over, still quiet but watching carefully. Keanu talked softly about balance, about tension in the spokes, about how sometimes even metal bends back with the right kind of care. You work with bikes? The boy finally asked. Keanu smiled. Not really. I ride sometimes. Crash sometimes too. The boy smirked, just a little. You look like someone famous. Maybe, Keanu said. But tonight, I'm just the guy helping with a bent wheel. The streetlight flickered again and finally gave out, leaving them in the glow of the nearby gas station sign. Keanu straightened the rim enough to spin, then adjusted the chain and tightened the seat. Try it, he said. The boy stood, mounted the bike, and pushed forward. It wobbled, then steadied. He rode in a circle, then back, eyes wide with cautious joy. It works. He grinned. Just enough to get home, Keanu said. But promise me you'll ride safe. No more curb jumps tonight. The boy stopped in front of him. How'd you know what to do? Keanu shrugged. I've learned to fix a few things in my life. The boy hesitated. My name's Jordan. Nice to meet you, Jordan. What's yours? Keanu paused, then simply said Keanu. Jordan's eyes lit up, like Keanu Reeves. Keanu just smiled, stood, and patted the boy on the shoulder. Ride safe. Then he turned and walked into the night. Jordan stood there for a long time, holding the handlebars tightly, as if they were something more than just a bike. When he got home, his mom opened the door, ready to yell. But Jordan smiled and said, Mom, someone helped me. I think it was someone really important. And for the rest of his life, he never forgot that night. Not because a movie star fixed his bike, but because someone showed up, and no one else did, and didn't ask for anything. In return, the quiet booth at Table 9 was one of those evenings when the sky looked bruised. Orange and purple clouds hung low, and a soft wind blew trash across the sidewalk like lazy tumbleweeds. Inside Marcy's diner, the lights buzzed faintly. and the smell of fried eggs, old coffee, and warm syrup lingered in the air like a worn blanket. Table 9 was always the quiet booth by the window, the one most customers walked past, the one waitresses barely glanced at because tips from that spot were usually small or none at all. But that's where Ruth sat. Every evening like clockwork, same dress, same faded green coat, silver hair pulled back in a clip that had lost most of its shine. She ordered coffee, always black, sometimes toast if she had enough for it, and sometimes just water. No one really knew her story. Some whispered she used to be a singer. Others said she had family who forgot her. But Ruth never complained. She just sat, looked out the window, and waited for something or someone that never came. That night, Keanu Reeves stepped in without fanfare. He didn't wear sunglasses, no hat, just jeans, a dark jacket, and quiet eyes that scanned the room like he was searching for something. He didn't go to the counter or ask for a menu. He walked straight to table 9. Ruth looked up, surprised. Her coffee trembled slightly in her hand. "Do you mind if I sit?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then nodded. "It's a free country." He sat across from her, not saying anything at first. The waitress came over, startled for a second when she recognized him, but he simply said, "Coffee, please," and waved off the menu. Ruth stared at him. You're that actor." Keanu smiled. "Some days." "What are you doing here?" "I used to come here a long time ago, when things were quieter. I remembered this booth." Ruth blinked. "Remembered me?" Keanu nodded. "You sang once here? On open mic night? Years ago?" Her mouth fell open a little. "You were there? I was having a bad night," he said. "You sang something slow, something real. I remember thinking, ... it helped." Down at her hands. They were thin and spotted with age. "I used to sing a lot, before the world moved on." Keanu leaned forward. "It hasn't moved on from you." They talked for an hour, no rush, no pressure. She told him about the jazz bar she once sang in downtown, about a man she loved who never came back from the war, about how the years got quieter and the friends got fewer. She didn't cry. She didn't want pity. And Keanu didn't give her pity. He gave her presents. When the bill came, he paid in cash. Left enough to cover her next 5 visits. But he didn't say that out loud as he stood to leave. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small envelope. "For you," he said. "What is it?" "Just a note, for when you forget how beautiful your voice is." Then he was gone. No photos. No autographs. Just the sound of the door chime and the hush that followed. Ruth opened the envelope after he left. Inside was a handwritten note. "I still hear your voice. It made a sad night feel human again. Thank you." Beneath it was a small card with an address to a community center that hosted music nights for seniors. She didn't tell anyone, but the next week, Ruth showed up at the center, and when she sang, heads turned. Someone wept quietly in the back row, and Ruth smiled for the first time. In years, not because she was discovered, but because she was remembered. The man on the bench with shaking hands. The park was nearly empty as the sun dipped behind the skyline. Orange light spilled across the grass, turning the quiet paths golden. It was the kind of hour where shadows stretched long and people hurried home without looking around. Only one bench was occupied, an old wooden bench near the duck pond, where paint had peeled from years of sun and rain. A man sat there alone. He wore a worn-out flannel shirt, jeans that had seen better days, and a baseball cap pulled low. His hands trembled in his lap, not from the cold, but from something deeper. Something he couldn't quite name. His name was Tomas, and for the last 3 days, he hadn't spoken to anyone. It's not since the hospital visit. It's not since the diagnosis. That felt like a slow sentence written across the rest of his life. He was only 50, but he felt ancient. Keanu Reeves came walking through the park, a small paper bag in one hand. He had just picked up takeout from a nearby shop and was planning to eat quietly at home, but something made him stop. Maybe it was the way Tomas sat. Not just still but empty, like he had already left, even though he was still breathing. Keanu slowed, then turned. He walked to the bench and stood for a moment before asking, "Mind if I sit here?" Tomas didn't even look up. Just gave a Small shrugged. Free country. Keanu sat down and set the bag between them. Silence stretched for a minute. Ducks quacked softly near the water. Wind rustled the trees, then Tomas spoke, his voice low and cracked. You don't have to sit here. I'm not good company. Keanu looked straight ahead. Neither am I. Not always. Another pause. You look familiar, Tomas said finally. Keanu smiled slightly. I get that a lot. You an actor or something? Some people think so. Tomas gave a hollow chuckle. What's a guy like you doing on a bench next to a broken-down nobody like me? Keanu turned his head. You're not a nobody. Tomas. Swallowed. I got cancer. It's found out this week. Liver. Stage 4. Keanu's expression didn't change. No panic, no pity. That's heavy, he said softly. Yeah. Are you scared? Tomas nodded slowly. Not of dying, just of dying alone, of not meaning anything. Keanu sat with those words, let them settle. Then he reached into the bag and pulled out 2 containers. You hungry? Tomas blinked. What, I got too much food. Help me out. Tomas hesitated and nodded. They ate quietly. It's 2 strangers sharing rice and noodles from paper containers while the sun disappeared completely. No big conversation, no sudden comfort, but something. Shifted, Keanu eventually said, you know, meaning doesn't always come from big things. Sometimes it comes from sitting on a bench with someone who needed you to be there, even if they don't say it. Tomas stared at him. Keanu continued. I lost someone once. She meant everything, and I couldn't fix it, couldn't save her. But she taught me that presence matters. Even silence can be love. Tomas looked down. His eyes glistened. Thank you. They sat until the stars came out when they parted. Keanu pressed a folded note into Tomas's hand. Just in case you forget, he said. Tomas watched him walk away into the dark. Later he opened the note. You are seen. You are not alone. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. Tomas wept for the first time in weeks, not because he was healed, but because someone chose to sit beside him without needing a reason. The boy with the notebook full of dreams, Thrain, had started again. Light at first, just a mist kissing the sidewalks, then heavier, soaking jackets and bouncing off umbrellas. Downtown buzzed with its usual chaos, horns, voices, blinking crosswalks. But inside the little library tucked between a thrift shop and a noodle house, everything was still. A boy sat alone at the back table. He looked about 13, wearing a too big hoodie and sneakers with one sole peeling off. In front of him lay a cheap spiral notebook, its pages curled at the corners, covered in scribbles. He flipped through them slowly, not for fun, but for comfort. The words were messy, most crossed out and rewritten over and over. Stories, 100 beginnings, none finished. Dreams poured onto paper with no one to read them. His name was Dev. He came to the library every Friday, sat in the same chair, and filled page after page while the world forgot about him. His mom worked nights, his dad wasn't around, his teacher said he was smart but unfocused. No one knew he wrote stories about far-off planets and kids. With wings and silent heroes who saved the world without ever being seen, he didn't want fame. He wanted to be heard. That evening, Keanu Reeves stepped into the library wearing a rain-wet coat and holding a book under one arm. He wasn't there for attention. He was just returning something late. But when he passed by the back table, he noticed Dev's eyes, locked in focus, not on a phone, not on a game, but on a sentence that refused to sound right. Keanu slowed. He didn't say anything at first, just walked past, returned the book, and came back the same way. On his second pass, he stopped. That your story? He asked. Dev looked up, startled. Kind of. Keanu pulled out the chair across from him and sat gently. Can I hear it? Dev blinked. Like, read it? Keanu nodded. You can read it to me. I've got time. Dev hesitated. No one had ever asked. Not like that. He cleared his throat, flipped to a page near the middle, and began reading. His voice was quiet, shaky. But as he spoke, something inside him lit up. The words became stronger, fuller, and Keanu listened really listen, nodding sometimes, smiling at the good lines, raising an eyebrow at the surprising twists. When Dev finished, he looked down, bracing for polite silence. But Keanu leaned forward. "You have something real," he said. "You've got voice, heart, don't stop." Dev blinked hard, trying not to cry. "You think it's good?" Keanu smiled. "I think it's yours, and that's what makes it good." He pulled a card from his pocket. No logo, no fanfare. Just a name and number written in clean ink. "If you ever want someone to read more, I'd love to." Dev held it like it was gold. Then Keanu stood. "Keep writing. The world needs your words." Before he left, he paused and said one more thing. "When I was your age, I wrote too. Most of it was messy. But someone told me the same thing I just told you, and I never forgot it." Dev watched him walk out into the rain. A few minutes later, the librarian approached Dev, holding a small package. "The man who just left asked me to give you this," she said. Dev opened it. Inside was a fresh leather-bound notebook, a pen, and a note. "Fill these pages. Your stories matter." Years later, Dev would become a writer. His books would reach shelves around the world. In every dedication, he would write the same line. For the man who listened. Keanu never talked about the people he helped, never posted about the hands he held, the hearts he comforted, or the lives he changed with simple kindness. He never needed cameras, never wanted headlines. He just kept walking through the world, choosing to see the invisible, to lift the fallen, and to remind the forgotten that they were still worthy, because that's who he was. Just Keanu. And that was enough.